So hi guys, welcome back to our channel. I'm Barry. I get a lot of questions at the moment about permaculture. What is permaculture? How do I define permaculture? What is the difference between permaculture and any other organic growing system? And is permaculture limited to organic gardening and organic horticulture? And hopefully I'm going to answer these questions today in this video. So hi guys, I'm Barry. Welcome back to our channel. So permaculture, that's going to be the topic of conversation today. I got into permaculture, first heard about it back around 2010. So I'm from a medium-sized city here, the second largest city in Ireland, in Cork, and I had no experience with organic horticulture or growing vegetables or farming or anything like that growing up, being from the city, from one of the suburbs in Cork's north side. So when I started researching and looking into organic horticulture, because I knew it was something I wanted to be involved in, permaculture was one of the things that kept coming up and something I was really attracted to from the get-go. It was kind of hard to get an explanation on what it was, but what the people that were putting up videos and the vlogs that I was reading about permaculture, all the stuff, it just made sense. It was like, oh, this just makes sense, that like how they were designing their gardens, it looked like it was the least amount of work, and the way that like I was attracted to the whole design, the idea of sitting down and creating a design, and being able to change that design then as you observe what's going on and you interact with what's going on. You look at what's working and what's not working within that whole system, and looking at the garden as an entire system. I'd naturally be a problem solver by nature. I'd be quite analytical. Before I got into organic horticulture and started working in this field, I worked as a carpenter and joiner. Spent a good few number of years working in that, so I do well with problem solving. So what is permaculture? Permaculture was founded by Bill Mollison and David Holmgren back in the 70s as a design system that resembles nature. As for definitions, one of the definitions I like the most, I heard Jeff Lawton say it a couple of years ago, about what permaculture is, and it was kind of the definition that kind of encompasses the whole ideology of what permaculture is for me. It's a set of ethical design principles with three key tenets. So the first tenet is earth care, the second one is people care, and the third one is fair share. So like for me, there's 12 principles of permaculture, and each one of them takes into consideration caring for the planet, caring for the earth, being as restorative and regenerative as you can in your growing practices, looking after the people care in the system, and thirdly, fair share, so everyone gets a fair share. These are just things that just resonated with me from day one. In permaculture, even before I heard that definition, I could see these things coming through in how permaculture was being applied. I find definitions, for me, things written on paper or when people talk about it, I find it hard to understand what they are until I see these things in action. For me, really, it's about designing systems. It's about like getting the most out of each piece of that system. So if you're placing something in the system, it's about sitting back first and looking at what are the benefits of this thing, and why would I place this item in the system here and not over here, and how do things interact with each other. So it could be something as simple as putting one plant next to another plant that benefits each other. Or like zoning is a very big thing in permaculture as well, you know, like if you want to have access to fresh herbs, there's no point to putting them in the back of your garden. it's about like putting the things that you use the most nearest to where they're going to be used. So in the case, like if I was designing a herb garden for my house, I'd put that pretty much either on the kitchen windowsill or at the back door, that if I needed access to these things, I could readily get access to them. So there's a lot of good resources out there on permaculture, you know, a lot of good books. In terms of the permaculture principle, I think for me, David Holmgren has the best book on these. His book on the principles goes through in length each one of the principles and how they're applied. But there's some amazing resources online on YouTube that you can look up and learn a bit more. So now I'm going to give you a quick look at a system that I've designed within my garden here. And it's something really simple, but it encompasses for me what permaculture is, and it goes through the principles of permaculture. And it's simple. Like, all it is I found a birdseed feeder in a skip that was cracked at the end, and I was able to replace it. And about where I placed the birdseed feeder and how it interacts with the rest of the entire garden and with the other systems that I have in place. And like, that's it. Like, it's really simple, but when you apply the principles of permaculture to any item in your system, you can get more functions out of it, and you can just maximize the yields that come from the placement and the interaction of that thing in the system. What I'm saying here now is just my interpretation of what permaculture is. So if any of you have any other opinions on permaculture or a better definition that I could use on permaculture, I'd love to hear that. So you could just post them below in the comments and I'd be very grateful. So we're going to look at a system now that I've designed, and it's something really simple, but for me, I feel like it encompasses what permaculture is. It's a simple birdseed feeder that we found. It had a cracked end on it, and we're just going to talk through the thought process of installing something into the system, something simple like a birdseed feeder, and how we can use and apply the principles of permaculture to get the most out of that item. So as you see here now, this is our simple birdseed feeder, nothing fancy. We replaced it with repaired it with some clear tape. So when we got this now first day, I had the idea to hang it outside here on one of the trees. Like you would, you don't really think about where you're putting it. You put it outside on a tree, birds come along, they started taking out the seed out of it, and that's great. But applying the first principle of permaculture, observing, I was watching this happening, and as I was watching it, I was noticed as the birds landed, as you can see, seed was falling out. I came down one day, and what was at the end of the birdseeder? Only 2 massive rats eating the feed. These rats that would go on to come into the chicken coop, and they'd steal eggs and stuff like that. So I decided to interact with this and think about where I had it placed and maybe move it. So I came up with a plan to move the birdseeder using the principles of permaculture, and where I would place it would be inside the chicken coop. So we started off, first off it was down a bit lower. Another thing as well is some birds will feed well out of this, and other birds are ground feeders. So I took a piece of timber that we cut down, put some mesh over it, because when we put this in first, it didn't have the mesh, so it just had this. It was all down a bit lower. There was crows and magpies landing on it, and they were eating whatever fell out. So the idea of feeding the birds for us here is we want to use birds, attract birds, especially ground feeders like wrens, robins, and some other birds that will eat pests, snails, slugs and stuff like that within the system to help us control pests. So we decided to put this on here to encourage the ground feeders. We put this up a bit higher because the chickens as well were flying up here and they were taking the seed. So now there's three functions happening here. The birds are being fed, whatever falls out is landing in here, the ground feeders are getting the food in here, and any waste that comes out, this system does not produce any waste. Another principle of permaculture, anything that falls out here, as you can see again, the chickens get a lovely tasty treat. So for me, this just simplistically explains what permaculture is and how the principles of permaculture can be applied to any system at all, no matter how simple it is. I plan on doing another video in the future because we're redesigning our whole system in here, because we've been here now 6 months. I've had plenty of time to observe and interact with the whole chicken setup here and the compost area, and now we're going to optimize it, redesign it, and reevaluate what we're doing to get the most out of it. So permaculture, that's what it's all about. It's all about reevaluating and redesigning and making small little tweaks all the time to get the most out of the system. So now I hope you really enjoyed the video, and hopefully there's a bit more understanding of what permaculture is, and I'd love to hear any feedback in the comments. So thanks guys, have a great day and see you, bye.